Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, we have with us today Ruhana Sahiba from Bangladesh originally, and then in the United States. And we will be sharing, my internet connection is a bit troubling, but so she is from Washington, DC, 19 hours, 50 minutes, far away from Karachi. And we appreciate her time and that she's from, so we saw that she started her career from Bangladesh, and that is our neighboring and friendly or brotherly country. And she got her early education. And this is a place which is, mashallah, a thriving place. And one of my friend, he owns a textile group in Bangladesh, Musaddaq Zulkarnain. He's the owner of Interloop Private Limited. And he is full praise of the development of Bangladesh. The level of development which has taken place in Bangladesh, I think we must salute. We must give them a salute. And that is tremendous. So Ruhana got an opportunity to work with Unilever and Nestle there. And after her education, she went, early education, she went to London School of Economics. She did her bachelor's in economics. And from there, she moved on to New York State University. And you know these buildings, I hope. So I think, Ruhana, it's not a surprise. Okay. And from there, she moved on to Harvard. And she was there for her MBA. And these are the typical classroom, raising the hands, the CP, class participation. So I have been doing that at LUMS as well. So she went through like 500 plus cases and took some courses at Harvard Kennedy School, and even audited some classes on Islamic philosophy, and president of Women's Student Association. And you know how we got her? Ruhana, how I approached you, I came to know? I came to know about Clayton, your teacher, since 2010. And I've been teaching this article for the past 6-7 years. And whenever I read this article, on the side note, you see here, your name is mentioned, Ruhana Hafiz. You know this thing?
I do. In fact, Shahid, Dr. Qureshi, a lot of people connect via LinkedIn with me based on this article. And so what I did not know before is this is potentially one of the most read articles that Harvard Business Review has published. So I have nothing to do with this article. They just interviewed me and they chose my comments, but it has brought me what we say 5 minutes of fame, yes.
Exactly. So you see, so I just said, hey, one day I will call her. So that one day took 1 year, 2 years, 5 years, I think maybe 10 years. So one day I said, let me call her. Let me find, went to LinkedIn and called, and you were kind enough to respond right away. And why I called you was because I wanted to meet Clayton. I was in Boston in 2018, and I emailed him. But he was so sick that he couldn't meet, and eventually he died a few months ago.
Right.
So in a way, he talks about you in this article, that I came to business school knowing exactly what I wanted to do, and I'm leaving choosing the exact opposite. So in the next few slides, this is Clayton, and we have, you see, we teach him his book in our curriculum, and it has helped a lot. And this is various books which he has been teaching. And this is what interesting thing what he says in the article. He says, over the years, I watched the fates of my HBS classmates unfold. I've seen more and more of them come to reunions, unhappy, divorced, and alienated. I can guarantee you that they did not make that strategy. So why, what happens? So his book talks about that, and he says that I was diagnosed with cancer, and that experience made him think. And then he says, I have concluded that the metric by which God will measure my life isn't dollars, but the individual people whose lives I have touched. So I will stop here, and it will be over to Ruhana Hafiz. And we will be interested in our MBA students, because we are obsessed with the corporate world and making money and richer and richer. And we have our own definitions of success. So we want you, as a student of Clayton and as a person who has been through these times. So we would like to learn from you that what is the definition of success, and what is your experience, and what is the takeaway for us, the people in Pakistan. Thank you very much. Over to you.
Thank you. I'm like a good student, sir. I am taking notes as you ask the questions so I can hit some of those points. And I'll try to answer all of those as much as I can, but please ask me questions.
So we can ask through chat box. The questions will be coming to chat box and I will read out.
Okay, thank you. So with your permission, Assalamu alaikum.
Yes.
Good evening to everyone in Karachi, Pakistan. Good morning from Virginia, USA. My name is Ruhana Hafiz, and as Dr. Qureshi gave me a very, very kind introduction, I'm honored to be here to be speaking with you. Just a few of my experiences and answer questions that you may or may not find helpful, but I will try my best. I thought about how to structure this talk. I usually don't do PowerPoints or slides. I find them a little stagnant. I'd rather talk just as a person if I were sitting in a classroom with you. And then as questions come in, I'm much more interested in answering questions than just talk about myself, to be honest. So briefly, I was born in Bangladesh. I grew up there. I completed my A-levels, and then I went to LSE to do economics, because most South Asian parents think that their children should study medicine or engineering or law. And if they're not that smart, they should probably study economics or business. I was not interested in science, so my option was economics, which is what I did. Economics is a very useful discipline. It teaches you to be very analytical and rational and make assumptions about any given model and then try to find the solutions to the problems therein. So it was a good training, but I knew my heart was not in it. I was interested in business. So while I was at LSE, Unilever Bangladesh started recruiting global recruits, and they picked me. So I took that job. And at 21, became a young brand manager with Unilever Bangladesh. Enjoyed that, moved on to Nestle, loved that. But why I'm talking about this is important, because like everyone, I thought that working for a multinational corporation in a developing country was a great opportunity, a plum job, and it was. It taught me a lot. It taught me how to prioritize. It taught me how to run brands. It taught me marketing, finance, operations, supply chain, all the important facets of running a business. But at the end of the day, what I was doing was selling more shampoo or soap, or in Nestle, milk powder, Nido, Coffee Mate, breakfast cereals, Nescafe. There's nothing wrong in it. And at 22, 23, it was very fun to do that. But at some point, I would come home and think, okay, I spent 10 hours today at work, making a lot of shareholders even richer. Okay, that's one way to think about it. But in Bangladesh, it was exciting also because we were working on making those products available at cheaper prices to the mass market. So we are all familiar with the concept of sachet marketing. If somebody in a rural area can't afford a full bottle of shampoo, the innovation was, and this is an interesting innovation, instead of a whole bottle of shampoo, you sell a mini packet of shampoo for 5 rupees or 3 taka or what have you, and those people would be able to afford it. So that is the part that appealed to me, but just selling more and making more money for the corporation wasn't so much. But I enjoyed my job. And while I was there working in Bangladesh, I married a US citizen. And so I moved to New York in 2004. Having moved to New York, my career trajectory again started in marketing. So I did marketing and advertising because New York City is the world's epicenter of advertising, fashion, you name it. And it's also a wonderful city, absolutely one of my favorite cities. So I did that in New York. And when I was doing that, I picked up a part-time master's in marketing from City University of New York. But I'm the sort of person who likes to, I guess, learn more and push myself more. So I had a full-time job. I was earning a part-time master's. I was married. And my husband and I was also running a nonprofit networking organization. And it wasn't enough. So I told him, I think I want to go for my MBA. He said, okay. And so I decided to apply to business schools. And I was very fortunate to be accepted by Harvard and Wharton and et cetera. And I decided to go to HBS. Never visited before, didn't know much about it, but I said, why not? So I did. Interestingly, my husband also went to business school, but he went to Yale. So we spent 3 years apart at two different business schools. He in Connecticut, in New Haven, at Yale, and I was in Boston for HBS. So we have a very interesting network of people because an MBA is not the same everywhere else. So we have a lot of interesting conversations, comparing our experiences and expanding our networks. So the question I'm going to answer is why MBA and why HBS and what did it mean to me? So when I went for my MBA, I was still focused on the private sector. I thought, okay, if I'm in business and I'm doing marketing, might as well try to make more money. And it makes sense to go to HBS and get a top education and then join another corporate and just keep rising the corporate ladder. And an MBA would, of course, as you all know, gives you a very well-rounded grounding. So you come out of an MBA basically able to put your hands to anything. But when I went to business school in the year 2008, that was the beginning of the collapse of the US economy. If any of you remember, the US went through a severe recession in 2009 and 10. So as we entered a new class at HBS, the world literally around us was tumbling. The financial markets were tumbling. And some of those players, some of the big players and some of the big corporations were people who had previously attended HBS. So take a pause here. HBS is supposed to be what we call a capitalistic epicenter of the world that teaches you about leadership, about transformation, how to make more money, how to be leaders. But they have also given rise to a lot of leaders who went on to found Enron, for example, and other dubious organizations and have done some harm in the world. So when we were students at HBS, our professors were actually very focused on teaching us about what we call the double profit line. So double bottom line. So it's not just about making profit. Are you doing any good in the world? So whatever work it is that you do, does this have any positive impact on yourself or your community or the world? And because the economy was collapsing around us at that time, the HBS administration decided to make us go through more classes on what we call ethics and morality. It was very interesting because in the morning, we would have a strategy professor come in and talk to us about how to maximize your sales with a certain group of customers. And in the afternoon, our ethics or morals professor or logic professor would come in and say, okay, you now know who your target audience is and what you need to do. But what is the social impact, other than the business impact? What is the social impact of this venture or this entrepreneurship initiative that you're doing? So I personally felt that my years in HBS was very much a tug of war, not a conflict per se, but we got a different education or a different context than people who went to HBS before us. So that was very obvious to me. And some of the things that impacted me are as follows. I'm going to come to Clayton Christensen's article on how to measure your life later. I'm going to talk about something else before that. What I realized when I was at business school is even in the US, even in the East Coast, Massachusetts or Boston, even at a place like Harvard Business School, there is inequity and the playing ground is not the same. So people with privilege or people with advantages would always have an extra door open for them. And that's very interesting because we like to think that after you reach a certain level or you go to a certain place, those differences don't exist. But we're human beings, so human beings have systemic biases and issues, and so problems exist everywhere. And I want to say this very clearly because I used to think growing up in Dhaka that because I come from a Muslim family or a conservative background or it's a developing country, that's why we have all these issues. I now know, having lived in Europe and Asia and the United States, that there are issues of inequality and injustice and lack of diversity everywhere. Sometimes it's apparent, sometimes it's not. But as human beings, we are fighting those things all the time across all fronts. And that's something for all of us to remember. So in Harvard Business School, so taking the macro level, bringing it to a very micro thing, I realized that only 35% of the class were women. So 65% men and about 30 to 35% women. And we also found out that 50% of your class marks was based on class comments. 50% of your grade was the comments you made in class. And only 50% was your final paper or exam or case study or tests. So that places a huge emphasis on how confident you are, how you speak in class, how confident you are in raising your hand and arguing with your classmates, arguing with your professors, putting your point across. And I quickly realized that women were not very comfortable with that. In fact, the international students in general were very respectful. And you know, in Pakistan, very similar culture in Bangladesh, right? We are soft-spoken, we are very respectful, we don't interrupt people, we don't like to talk about ourselves, we don't like to sell ourselves. And I know in Bangladesh, like if a woman is soft-spoken, doesn't talk too much, she's like a good girl, all of that. So that's the sort of thing we grew up with. Now, I was never like that, so that wasn't a problem for me personally, but I realized very quickly that my female classmates were falling behind in their classes and then grades. And when we came back in the second year, I saw that half of the girls in my class didn't come back for the second year. So I went up to the administration and said, excuse me, ma'am, these friends of mine, they're not in class. Are they okay? Are they sick? Did something happen? And they said, well, to be honest, HBS, it's not a failing policy, but every year the people who are at the very bottom in their grades, we ask them not to come back. So there's a forced curve system. And so these people didn't make it to the second year. I was shocked. I did not even know that you could fail an MBA class or in the first year to the extent that you can come back. And I asked, really? But they were very good students. I mean, I studied with them. They're very smart. They write well. I mean, their papers were amazing. And I was told it came back to class participation. These women hadn't spoken enough in class. It's as simple as that. Because men are in general better at speaking up, raising their hands. I'm going to apologize to all the men here. Men are very good at interrupting others, especially women, and say, well, actually, but what it really means, women don't do that, usually. Again, there are exceptions.
Exactly, we agree with you.
Well, it's a macho culture. I mean, it happens in the US too. So there are white men in the class who are shutting other people down all the time. So you have to constantly go against your values or your religious system or what your parents think is right and say, oh no, I'm here, I have 60 minutes in class, my grade depends on how I speak, and I just have to go at it. Like I remember in an entrepreneurship class, I made a point about how the composition of the board was wrong and they needed more diversity on the board. And the white German man sitting next to me, he's, by the way, one of my good friends, he simply raised his hand and in front of 100 students told the professor, Ruhana is completely wrong. I absolutely disagree with her because ABC, she didn't do this, she didn't say this, she didn't say. He tore me apart. Now, most of my female friends at that point would have just stood back or quiet and, just went on. I raised my hand right back. I said, well, since he criticized my comment, professor, I have the right to defend myself. I have a right to do the rebuttal. He said, absolutely, go at it. So I said, and I think you're wrong because of ABC. If you say ABC, I'm going to say DEF. And we had it for 5 minutes. And at the end, the class just started clapping. And professor was like, okay, I think Ron won your points. So next time, Philippe, before you just raise your hand to disagree with somebody for the sake of disagreeing, have better points, move on. What I didn't realize was some of the things that I did in the class gave my other female friends a lot of encouragement, because what I realized is what came to me naturally may not come to others naturally, men or women. But when I found out that friends of mine were asked not to come back, I just couldn't sit back. So because of my position with the Women's Students Association, I took it upon myself to design a survey and I sent it to all the females in Harvard Business School. So at HBS, the MBA is a full-time program for 2 years. So we have about 500 to 600 female students across 2 classes because the class size is about 900-ish. More than 400 women responded to my survey. And I sat down with one of my management consulting friends and analyzed the findings of the survey. And it blew my mind. The results were absolutely catastrophic. It showed us very clearly that women did not feel comfortable in HBS. women did not feel comfortable raising their hands necessarily. They often felt that when they made a comment, the professor didn't pay as much attention if the same comment was made by a man, because of the way the women delivered the comment. It was soft, it was very tentative. Women tend to make a point with a questioning. So they would say something to the tune of, well, I think the case protagonist could have done a better decision in choosing maybe his executives. So they will end the question or their statement with a question or intonation. Whereas a man would make his statement that I absolutely think he was wrong and he should have chosen somebody else to be the finance manager. Done. So apparently how human beings perceive your comments has an impact on what importance they attach to what you say. So both with delivery, comfort, raising your hands, professors not paying attention to females, it all came back to the fact that some of the women didn't feel prepared to come into business school. Some of them were teachers, maybe not all of them were from banks or financial corporations, so they didn't have the right background. So it was a combination, what we call a perfect storm of factors that led to this. And this was systemic, so it's not the first year that happened. But the administration never, what's the word I'm looking for? They never dug deep to see what was happening. So when my friends and I came up with these presentations, we created a whole deck. We created a slideshow with recommendations, with findings, with the survey methodology, because it's HBS. If I go up in front of anyone, they're going to tear my data apart. They're going to ask the methodology. They're going to ask whether it was statistically significant, how many people I spoke with. So we really prepped. Then we approached a female professor who we knew were sympathetic to the cause. We explained to her, she was like, this is fantastic, but I'm not the right level. You need to keep presenting to other folks. Then we went to the associate dean, we went to the senior associate dean, and within a couple of months, we had an audience with the dean of Harvard Business School himself, who is like pretty much an impossible person to get to. And it started a conversation. They kept talking about it. Other people came forward. Then HBS did their own study. And the year after I left business school, they did so many changes. Shahid, it was amazing. So one of the changes they did was have more sessions to teach women how to speak in class, but anyone can come to that. So how to be a better public speaker, how to be more confident. They had sessions on international students, adjusting better to an international US climate. But now they have a secretary or a scribe in every MBA class whose main job is to write down every comment the students make in class and then hand it to the professor. Because before, what was happening, a professor such as yourself had to both teach a class, keep control of a class with 100 students, teach very important topics, and keep in his head, memorize who said what at what point and whether that comment was good. It's a very, very hard task. I couldn't do it. How can you expect a professor after 2 hours to remember 50 comments in a class and who said what when? It's pretty much an impossible task. But that's what HBS professors had been doing for decades. But now there's somebody in class and that person's main job is she has a chart with everybody's face and name. Anyone raises their hand, she simply puts a comment there and gives it to the professor. So the professor can focus on teaching and not memorizing comments. So this itself has made such a huge change in how women feel comfortable in class, and there's no more biases. So why do I say this story so importantly? Because Shahid, you mentioned something that you can have $0 or $1,000. It doesn't matter what you have. What matters is initiative, creativity, and a drive to do something better, to make change come about. And to me, that's very important because I was just a second-year student. I was not a professor. I was not a dean. I had no power. I don't come from privilege. I didn't have a moneyed family, nothing. All I had was a sense of injustice at what was happening. And I was enraged that a school like HBS was simply not doing anything about it. So I gathered my friends around and I just went at it, did the study, presented to the professors, and eventually brought about all these changes. So to me, that is one of the things I'm most proud of, accomplishments-wise. I've done many things in my career professionally, but this is one of the things that I think will have a lot of impact and has had a tremendous amount of impact on hundreds of students in the last 10 years that I've left HBS. In my second year, I also took the class on Entrepreneurship and Disruptive Innovation, which was co-founded by Professor Clayton Christensen, as you said. And in that class, it was very fascinating because while teaching that class, he was diagnosed with cancer. So he couldn't come to class for a few weeks. And we were in a turmoil, right? We didn't know what to expect. And the whole session was very much centered on you can do a lot with your life when you leave HBS or MBA or any institution, IBA, Karachi, all of these great places. But how will you choose to spend your time? What will you truly do with the gifts that Allah has given you or you yourself have worked hard for? So how will you measure your life? What is the impact of your life? Is a question that we talked about a lot in that class with Professor Christensen and his fellow peers. And to me, what it came down to was, I can leave HBS and go back to corporate America. I was interviewing with Johnson & Johnson. I was interviewing with Unilever, a whole lot of other marketing companies. But then the FBI, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, came to campus. And I was like, FBI? Why are they here? Okay, I guess I'll go and see what they have to say. And I did. And what I learned was in the entire US federal government, where about 4 million people work for the US federal government. So in the US, the government is in 3 tiers. You have the federal government, which is the entire country's national workforce. Then you have state government, then you have city government. So there are different levels. So federal government is one that is closely tied with Washington, DC. The FBI is the only federal agency in the United States of America that has a program which goes to the top 20 business schools in the US and recruits people to come in to work as internal consultants. I did not know that. I was like, that is very, dare I say the word, innovative. So I went, and out on a whim I applied. I didn't know whether I'd get in or not because they have a very strict background process. And, you know, I had just become a citizen, a Muslim, like lived all over the world, too many foreign connections, blah, blah, blah. But like, you know what, I'll apply. I have other jobs. I'll just apply to this. Went to the first round, went to the second round, went to the third round. They invited me to DC at their headquarters for the whole day to meet with the FBI executives and special agents and sort of, you know, have a 9 to 5, like an 8-hour interview day. And I enjoyed that a lot. So when I got that offer to come in to the Bureau, I thought about it long and hard. So to me, the question was very simple. Do I go back to the private sector and work very, very long hours and maybe try to make a lot of money or not? Or do I try something different in the public sector, in public service for an institution that is famous for helping people, for upholding the Constitution and everyone's human rights, and maybe try to have a work-life balance? I chose the latter. And I've been with the FBI for 10 years now. And I do not regret it in the least. In fact, I am so grateful that I have the opportunity to work with unbelievable people. And not just because they're special agents and they look really hot and really cool on TV, as we know, like the FBI shows and all that. Yes, some of them are like that. Yes, some of them are amazing. But for the most part, mashallah, they're just such good people. So I was talking about FBI. And what's interesting is the FBI is you would think that she's a bureaucrat. So what's the point of doing an MBA and going into the government, right? And how does she use her MBA? So if I tell you that I spent 2 years at HBS, I did over 500 cases, yada, 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 blah, blah, blah. So many frameworks, competitive theory, negotiations, managing for value, finance, finding the CAPM model. You don't remember any of that. I mean, no offense to any professors here, but once you leave your classroom in 2 to 3 years, you don't remember the textbooks. You don't remember the cases. You don't remember the arguments. What you do remember, or at least in my case, how to think. You remember how to tackle a problem because you have a framework and a toolbox in your head. So given any question or any challenge, you know, how am I going to tackle this? And very importantly in HBS's case, because it's a Socratic method of teaching, the professor teaches with questions and answers. He doesn't sit there and lecture. Our professors never stood up in front of the classroom and lectured. He starts with a cold call. He would come into the classroom, ask any one of the students and say, can you tell me about the case you studied last night? Boom, that's it. You don't know who's going to get called, so you have to read everything. And that person has to start that case and talk for 10 minutes or more. The professor will grill him with questions. And then other students starts talking. So it's very much learning from your peers and not just from your professor, but learning through a question answer method. So if I remember anything from my 2 years at an amazing institution, it's how to question, how to ask the right questions, and how to approach a problem. So the government everywhere, and it's not just the Pakistani government or the Bangladeshi government that has problems, trust me. The US federal government has a lot of problems, a lot of inefficiencies, a lot of areas for improvement. So I have been in 8 divisions in the FBI, what we say the Bureau, from counterintelligence to criminal to inspections to strategy to human resources. Right now I'm in IT. Because my job is to rotate different divisions and solve problems for the executives, right? And everywhere I go, I see I'm using my MBA education. I'm using the analytical framework. What's happening? Where do we need to go? How do we go there? What are the steps we need to take? What are the blockers? What is stopping us from getting from point A to point B? Who are the people who can help me in this journey? What do I need? How do I convince the decision makers that my recommendation is true? And how do I gather a team? The most important part, how do I gather a team and make my approach from point A to point B in a systemic way while keeping my bosses informed every step of the way of the challenges? That's it. I mean, if you ask me, how do you define program or project management? That's it. How do you go from point A to point B to figure out the steps that you need? What are the issues? What are the blockers? Who are the stakeholders? Who can help you and who might not help you, but you need their help? How do you build a team? You motivate a team, you track your progress, and you take steps A, B, C till you go from A to Z. That's it. That is program management. Now, how you do it in different contexts is different, of course. IT is different from finance. Finance is different from criminal division. Who you work with is different. But the basic questioning, so wherever I go in the FBI or other agencies, I have worked with the State Department, I worked with the CIA. Wait, I shouldn't have said that. Forget that. I did not work with the CIA. I'm not supposed to say that. But the problems are different, but the approach is the same, right? And when you ask the question and somebody says, well, Ruhana, we're doing it this way because we've always done it this way. For 20 years, we've done it this way. For 30 years, we've done it that way. That's a very common answer in government, right? For 50 years, we have done it this way. Who are you? You young person, you have an MBA and you think you can come here and tell me what to do and what's wrong with me? Ha, what do you know? I hear this all the time. The first thing is not to take offense. I'm never offended because I don't have an ego. And second, I always say, just because it has been done like this doesn't mean this is the best way. Can I help you do this better? Very respectfully, very honestly, you start the question and then you start the solution process. So this is what I do in the Bureau, and I enjoy my work a lot. So, you asked the question about what is the definition of success? How do I evaluate what I've done? Because Clayton Christensen talked a lot about how in 10 years or 20 years, the students would come back lonely, sad, divorced. Maybe their children don't have a good relationship with them, or they have so many problems. Now, I will say that we are a little better off culturally because in our culture, in South Asian culture, in our religious culture, we value family a lot, family and friendship. So it takes a lot for us to break up the family unit. So we'll do a lot of sacrifices, right? There's nothing I will not do for my bachas. I mean, we'll do anything and everything. So we value our parents, we value our spouses, we do everything for our children. So that helps us in some of this depression and loneliness and whatnot. But America or the Western world can be very hard and it can be very harsh for people trying to live. In my case, like I have a separate identity at home, Shahid, where I make chicken shawarma and luchi and parathas for my children on a regular basis. Like I cook like mad. I love cooking. As a matter of fact, it's my children's birthday today. So I'm cooking a feast tonight. But at work, I'm very much a professional, very much a management consultant. So we have all these identities that we have to balance, right? So we are, I think, a little better off in this way. And remember, Clayton Christensen was a Mormon. So I don't know if any of you know much about the Mormon religion, but their values are very similar to ours in Islam. Family first, God first, family second, how you live your values. So he would tell us stories about how in everything he would think about God and what he needed to do. And that would be his sole deciding factor in everything, mashallah. And that's how he lived his life. He had 5 or 6 children. His wife was very devoted to him. So he said, no matter how hard I worked, I tried to keep my focus that this life is limited. We will all pass away one day, inshallah, and be in the hereafter, in the eternal life. And what we do here, this matters. Every decision, every conversation, everything I do with my life and my time has an impact. So those values, I think, help us in general. And you'll be interesting to know that I'm the only one in my entire class to go into government. I'm also the only person who has not changed their job in the last 10 years. Because in America, if you're an MBA, you change your jobs every 3-5 years. So I have those dubious distinctions of not changing my job and being in the government. Mashallah. I'm very happy, alhamdulillah. I have no complaints or regrets whatsoever. I was able to have a work-life balance. I have 2 beautiful, healthy children, mashallah. They're growing up well. My husband and I have a very nice house, a simple, nice house that we enjoy. We try to live our life with the right values as much as possible here. So to me, that is success. Like, if you had asked me when I was 15 years old in Dhaka what success looked like, or when I was 25 years old, when I was working for Nestle Bangladesh, my answer might have been different. But I truly believe that no matter what your education and background is, whether you're a lawyer or a professor or an entrepreneur or a farmer or a housewife who has a catering business on the side, no matter what it is, if you can live a life of values and be of some help to someone, no, not everybody has to found a nonprofit and help 5 million people. That's not possible. Help 5 people if you can. And not even with money. Like if I have a conversation with 2 people this week and they feel better because they've spoken with me, or I was able to help them, alhamdulillah, that's enough for me. Like I do a lot of voluntary interview coaching because apparently I'm good at interviewing or public speaking. So people always come to me and say, hey, I have an interview. Can you help me prepare for it? Can we do some mock question answer sessions? So I do those all the time. That's almost like my voluntary community service. So these are the things that give me a lot of pleasure. Like people who apply for business schools or MBAs in the US, they'll find me from somewhere and send me an essay to edit. Say, Ruhana, do you have 10 minutes? Can you look at my essay and give me a few pointers if this makes sense? Or am I thinking about this the right way? To me, that's a privilege. Like in our religion that says when your guest comes to your house, it's a blessing. A guest is a blessing that he has visited your house. We sit down, we say Assalamu alaikum, we give them chai, nasta, we do whatnot. So to me, like when Shahid, you mentioned that you reached out to me in LinkedIn and I accepted, it's an honor. It's an honor for me to receive these invitations from a wonderful person such as you, who's trying to do so much for your community in your beautiful city. And what you asked me to do, talking to you folks for half an hour, 45 minutes, this is nothing. Ye kuch nahi hai. But if this helps anybody in thinking a little differently or understanding somebody else's life or knowing more about MBA or HBS or Kennedy or the FBI, that's my honor. So I'm going to just talk about one thing and then I'm going to take questions if you have time. If you read the papers, you are aware that other than this whole thing called COVID-19 going on that we don't even talk about anymore, the US is also struggling a lot with racism, right? The racial conversations that are happening all around the country is intense. Millions of protesters, vandalism, peaceful protest, bad protest, violence, but conversations are happening. And the reason I bring it up is the FBI is at the forefront of this because FBI is a law enforcement organization. At the end of the day, we lock up bad people. We investigate crimes. We are detectives and we catch bad people in all spheres and we push them through the justice system so that the bad people get their punishment and the good people are protected, right? That's what the FBI does. So the FBI is very much caught up in this dialogue on racism and diversity. And let me tell you something. America is a very diverse country right now, but law enforcement, by law enforcement, I mean the police, they are overwhelmingly white. And that is the problem. That's a huge problem, right? In the FBI, 70% of the special agents are white. 80% of the special agents are men. That is a problem. We don't have enough diversity in the organization. So the question I have to ask myself is, what's happening out on the streets is just a symptom of what's happening inside the organizations. I work in the FBI headquarters in Washington, D.C. It's called the Hoover Building. It was named after J. Edgar Hoover, the person who basically established the FBI. And in that building, there are 8,000 people who work. I'm the only Bangladeshi there. Why? That's a problem. I think that's a huge problem. In most of the meetings I go to, I'm usually the youngest. I'm often the only female, definitely the only brown person from South Asia, and definitely the only Muslim. Now, I get used to it. You have to. And at some point, you have to look at the label, shrug the label, and just do your meetings and get to the work done. But this is a systemic issue we're having. So the point I'm trying to make here is no matter where you find yourselves in life, you have to figure out how to navigate the politics of the organization, how to navigate the dynamics, how to get along with people who may not look like you, who may not think like you, who might not like you, who might not believe what you say, but you have to make alliances and friendships and get the work done. And these are things they don't teach you in business school. These are things they don't teach you in undergraduate classes. No classroom teaches you how to navigate the politics of the working place and get along with people, make your case respectfully, and keep making progress. You have to learn them the hard way, through knowledge, through trial and error. And this is the part I take very seriously. If my colleagues or anyone in America, they talk to me or meet me, and I'm the only Bangladeshi they will ever know, if I'm the only Muslim woman they'll ever know, my goal, inshallah, is to make that as positive as possible. If I have done that, I'm okay. And that is where I'm going to stop. I've talked way too much, way too long. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer. Shahid, over to you.
Oh, mashallah, that was an amazing. You made our day today. And I think it's a great opportunity. We have been teaching Harvard cases, and my friend from LUMS, Ahmed Bilal, is there. He's a LUMS graduate. LUMS claims to be the Harvard of Pakistan. And IB
I know LUMS. I've got friends who went to LUMS.
And IB also claims to be a part of LUMS as well. So I have to be on both sides because I'm a graduate of LUMS and I'm a graduate of IBA, professor at IBA, and I've been to Harvard and a Babson fellow as well. So ये chats कहाँ होती हैं, man? Where is the chat? So any questions popping up?
सर मैंने आपको 2 सवाल भेजे हैं WhatsApp पे.
Where the chats कहाँ होती हैं? ये खुला है ना? Where the chats? Where the chats? Just a minute. Chats कहाँ गई मेरी यार? Chats I cannot able to.
I have sent you 2 questions on WhatsApp.
It's a WhatsApp. Okay, I'm not able to open my. Okay, so the question number 1 is, what was your first win that made you confident that you were doing the right thing? What was your first win that made you confident that you were doing the right thing?
My first win?
Yes. In your life, maybe you're like going to Nestle or something that made you confident. Is somebody writing chat to me? As Abdullah, I can't see any chat in my.
The chat option is not allowed.
So you have clocked it?
No, sir. आपने meeting बनाते वक्त close की हुई है शायद.
Okay. So maybe then what happens is you can raise your hand. I can take few questions. Those people who have a question, they raise their hand, and I will allow them to speak.
Sure. So I'll try to tackle the first question. So
Yes.
The question was, what's the first win in my life that encouraged me to think that I was on the right direction or the right path, right? Okay. So when I was in class 6, we had a French teacher come into my school. So interesting story. I went to the only Catholic school in Dhaka, the only Christian school, because it was the best. And my mother was very insistent that she didn't see a difference between myself and my brothers. And she never thought that girls and boys should have different opportunities. So she said, no, this is the best school. If they can both get in, I will send both my children to this Christian school. Now, my dad's family is much more conservative, like in a good way. I mean, but you know, they wear the head covering, the veil, and they're very, very wonderful. But my mother's side, I would say, is slightly more liberal. Anyways, she sends me to this school, and my dadi and my fuppis, my buas, like they were not very happy. They were kind of upset with my parents for doing this to me. My mother said that whatever my girl wants to do in her life, I will encourage her to do it, because I believe she will not do anything to bring shame or do anything bad or not help people. So if that means she goes to a Christian school, she goes to a Christian school. It means she goes to a Buddhist school, she goes to a Buddhist school. I don't care. So I saw how much my mom fought with everybody, always to give me the opportunities in a poor country like Dhaka. And that meant so much to me, Shahid. I cannot explain to you what my mother, like, I should have probably started out with this because we are nothing without our parents, you know that, nothing without our parents. But what my mother has done for me, what my Ammi has done is unbelievable. Like I could not do anything in my life had she not been the encouraging factor, the person who always pushed me. So when she put me in this school and I came first in class, that to me was a very validation. So I came top in my class pretty much every year. And that gave me a lot of confidence that some people might not like the choice. You know, some people might question what my parents are doing, but I'm not doing anything bad. I'm trying to get the best education I can. And that was the start for me to do most things in life. Because I remember in class 6, I failed the French exam. And I told my mom that, I failed. I didn't understand what's going on. The teacher was bad. I got 2 out of 100. Now that is unspeakable for a good student to get 2 out of 100, right? But my mother, bless her soul, she's not with us anymore. She's in Jannah, inshallah. So what my mom did was she took me to the French Institute. I'm sure you have this in Karachi, the Alliance Française.
Yes, exactly.
Alliance Française French Institute. It was very close to my house, in walking distance in Bangladesh. She walked me there. She told the director, my daughter failed her French exam. You need to take her in your classes so she can do better. And the director said, I'm very sorry, madam, but it's only for adults. We start at 18. Your daughter is 12. My mother looked at him and said, she can handle it. The director said, but that's not our policy. My mother said, she can handle it. Director said, I'm going to give her 1 month. I'm going to let her come to class for 1 month and then I'll decide. So that to me was another indication of my mother's support and my own determination. I started learning French at 12. In 5 years, I finished the entire course at Alliance Française de Dhaka, and they made me a full-time teacher before I turned 18. Before I started my A-level exams, I started teaching there.
MashaAllah. Wonderful.
Before I had gone to college, to LSE, just before I went to London. So that to me, my first real job as a teacher in a foreign language, in a language I had failed 6 years ago, gave me a lot of confidence that no matter what comes through to life, I'll try my best with Allah's guidance. If I fail, I fail, but I'll give it a shot. So that's just, I think, my personality in general.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. Bashir Sahib, I will, if you permit, I would allow my female MBA students to ask questions first because so Sahar Sheikh Saiba, she belongs to a Chinoti community. This Chinoti is a town in Punjab, famous for its entrepreneurship. So Sahar, you can switch on your camera, and then we will having Momal Naveed as well. We take 2 female questions. Sahar, you can switch on your camera if you like.
Sir,
and
there's an issue with my camera. I'm unable to switch it on.
Okay, so please talk.
I hope I can ask the question.
Yes, please.
It was really inspirational listening to you, Ruhana. I'm deeply inspired by what you've said. But you mentioned that racism is a really relevant topic right now in the US, and everybody's talking about it finally, and it's getting the attention that it should have been given ages ago. Has that brought about a change in your organization as well? As in, is this something that is being openly discussed, or it's still hush-hush and people are not acknowledging the fact? Because you said that you work in an organization in which you are one of the only brown females working, in a government organization. So has there been some sort of a change being brought about because of what's happening there?
Not yet. And not enough. So that's an excellent question, Sahar. I don't know if I'm pronouncing your name correctly. Forgive me if I'm not. So what's happening is the federal government knows we have a problem. And we have been collecting what we call diversity statistics for a while, right? That shows the percentages of race, religion, sexual orientation, nationality, education, all of that. But you see, racism is just not about the color of your skin. Racism in a wider sense is also all sorts of discrimination because somebody is just different from you. So for me, socioeconomic discrimination is also a sort of racism. If someone comes from a very privileged class versus somebody who comes from an economically disadvantaged class, the way they're treated is also part of racism. And the fact that so many Blacks or African Americans in the US are discriminated against is the overwhelming case, Blacks come from a disadvantaged situation than whites. If I talk about schooling or inner city schools where the Black people live mostly, the schools are not that great, the facilities are not that great. So economic situation, the color of your skin, and many other factors, they're very closely connected. What's happening in the Bureau is we are trying to fight this racial injustice on the streets through the work we do as an organization. But internally, if you ask me, our managers sitting down and having those conversations with their employees, not enough. Not enough and not soon enough, in my opinion. I haven't had anyone reach out to me to say, hey, Ruhana, we didn't realize we had someone so strange and different in our own little organization. Tell us what you think. I'm waiting for someone to ask me. And people ask me that question in the corridors or in the buildings, outside when I'm having coffee at Starbucks. But in a systemic way, organizationally, in a structured method, are we having those important conversations? Not enough, not yet.
Thank you very much. So please, we'll be prepare brief questions, Momil, and then Mubashir, and then Asim Hussain. So Momil, can you ask a quick question, please?
Yeah, so I have, hi Ruhana, I have two questions from you. First of all, it was a very informative session indeed. My first question would be that you being graduated from one of the top institutes, what suggestions do you have for women out there who are pursuing their career, and also all the aspiring women who want to grow their business and who want to grow in career? And number two, what do you think we as a women, we face challenges because living in a country like Pakistan where we are often, you know, bashed for raising voice in favor of feminism. So what do you think, you know, how should women take a stand for themselves? And you know, what suggestions do you have to give to all of us in that regard?
Great questions. I'll try to do my best, but not sure if I have all the solutions you're looking for. So let's see. The first question was, what advice do you have for females to grow in their careers, whether it's a corporate career or a business, whatnot, and how to think about it? Well, I will tell you what has worked for me and some of my best friends in the US who are very successful in my metric. They have a very good understanding of themselves. If you don't understand yourself, if you don't internalize your own strengths and weaknesses, weakness might be a bad word. Let's say your strengths and things you could work on, areas of improvement. It is very hard for others to be impressed with you because no human being is perfect. Allah didn't make us to be perfect. We're not supposed to be good at everything. I'm good at some things, I'm not good at some other things. And so is everybody. When you have a sense of your self-worth, or what we say in corporate America, what you bring to the table, when you know what you bring to the table, it is easier for you to make a case for whatever that is you're making a case for. So for me personally, I never doubt myself. I never doubt myself. I work in IT. I don't even have an IT background. I'm working with computer scientists and technology specialists who are true subject matter experts. But I never walk into a room thinking, oh, he's an expert in this. He has a PhD in computer science. She has a PhD in data analytics. I don't know any of this. No, I walk into a room and I think, I'm here for a reason. They bring something to the table. I bring something different to the table, but we're a team. Together, we have the different parts of the puzzle that gives the solution. So I come in with that positive mindset to build a team and help others and get help from them. For me, it's never about, am I better than you? Are you showing off? Am I showing off?
Wow, mashallah.
So to me, that's very important because if you stop worrying about who gets the credit in a job, a lot more work gets done. I think sometimes in our culture, we worry too much about who gets the credit, who got the accolades, who got the praise, who did the boss praise. That's good. But if we all stop thinking about who got the praise and actually did the work, I think a lot of work gets done. So to grow yourself in your career, knowing yourself and understanding what you can or cannot do and being very humble and honest about it, to me, has always helped. I never go anywhere saying, I have the solution, I have an MBA, no. I know nothing. In a vast sea of knowledge, my knowledge is this much. But together, we can do a lot of good things. So if I respect you, I will get respect from you. So that is my personal approach. And the second question was about challenges that women face often in a more conservative society. You know, Bangladesh is very, very similar to Pakistan in many ways. And I worked in Bangladesh for 3 full years in corporate, right? And again, I was the youngest there. I was often the only female, blah, blah, blah. So that is the story of my life. That doesn't bother me. What I found was I can make a point by screaming. I can fight injustice with a temper, or I can make a point with humor, with respect. And to me, I found that humor always wins. So I tell everybody, especially my children, yeah, don't take life so seriously. Yeah. I mean, for me, I generally don't take life too seriously, believe it or not, I just don't. But even in the workplace, if something wrong is happening, or you think you have a voice, or you need to speak up, you can speak up in a way that other people find acceptable, and they'll pay you more attention, especially with men. Again, with respect to all the men here, I know you guys are all good and enlightened and you support women, but not everybody does. But if you want to change something in your environment, you have to make friendships with the men. Men are our allies. They are our biggest supporters. You cannot get far just by talking and being with women. That's important. I have amazing women friendships, don't get me wrong. But at work, some of my biggest advocates, my biggest supporters are men, because I have created this friendship in a good way that has nothing to do with the fact that he's a man, I'm a woman. It is a meeting of intellectual minds. It's a meeting of solving a problem together and helping you when I can. So when I need to help you, help me too. So building alliances and not being angry or screaming about it. Not that there's anything wrong with justified anger, don't get me wrong. But when you say the thing in a fun way, in a good way, people will react better. They'll listen to you more. And as my female bosses always say, Ruhana, what matters is at the end of the day, did someone listen to your point? And did they do it versus you shouting the loudest in the meeting? That's not the point. So I use humor, and I'm actually going to give a quick example, Shahid, if you permit me. Recently, very recently, I was in a meeting where I was presenting and I was taking questions at work. And there was this woman who is a computer scientist, super smart, and she was asking very smart questions. And some of the questions I couldn't even answer, but I always encourage that. So she's asking a question, and every time she would ask a question, the man sitting next to her would say, what Samantha is saying is this. So he was trying to explain her question to the audience, right? So first time it happened, I didn't say anything. Second time it happened, I was like, okay, maybe there's a pattern. The third time it happened, I looked at both of them, I paused and I said, let me take a breather. And I said, excuse me, his name was Boris. Funnily enough, they're both Russians. I said, Boris, I don't know if it's a Russian thing or not, but in Russia, do the women expect their men to explain, or what we say, mansplain their questions? Because I have never seen this before. The audience burst out laughing, right? Because I made a point, but without putting him down. I didn't want him to feel bad or shut off from the conversation, but I needed to support the woman in the conversation too, but I needed to do in a way that all these other people would also be okay with and go on. And as soon as I said that and people started laughing, there was a white guy sitting next to me, and he looked at me and said, everyone, what Ruhana is trying to say is, and then people started laughing again. Because he just did to me what Boris was doing to Samantha. But then once we all had a laugh, I said, okay, now let's get back to the situation. So this is just a practical example of how I deal with situations at work, if that's helpful.
MashaAllah, what a wonderful explanation. Mubashir Saab from Islamabad, you were there, sir. SM Mubashir Saab from Islamabad. So we have people from across the country listening to you, Ruhana. Islamabad, Karachi, Lahore.
Asim Hussain, sir.
Asim Hussain he did his bachelor's from Stanford and MBA from Fuqua School of Business in the US.
I know, yeah.
And he is a senior official in working for the government of Pakistan. And he was with me on the board of a good company. So Asim Saab, can you ask a simple, crisp question?
Yeah, thank you for the nice talk, Ruhana. I was also in USA for 14 years before returning to Pakistan. I went to Fuqua. That was back in '98. Like you, I've been working in the government sector for the last 10 years and have been trying to improve the efficiency within my department,
Wonderful.
In fact, I'm the project director for World Bank's Financial Inclusion Project with the Finance Ministry. So I have a question regarding the Corona crisis in USA. How are corporates in USA responding to the Corona crisis? Like, I mean, are they just downsizing, or do they have a strategy for overcoming the loss in revenues because of these lockdowns and reduced customers, or creating new channels to reach customers? I mean, how is the corporate world in USA responding or responding to the Corona crisis?
Thank you for your question. Assalamu alaikum. It's a very big question, and I will address some parts of that. I don't work in the corporate sector myself, obviously, so my knowledge is gleaned from reading about it and talking to my friends who are in the corporate sector, right? So from Harvard, we recently had our 10th reunion, virtually, of course, and we had the opportunity to talk to my friends, my classmates, who are in senior positions all across the US and the world in many corporate structures. So we had a lot of questions, answers on that. So the simple answer to a question is, it is not uniform. Within the corporate, we have different sectors, right? So the travel industry, the travel and airline industry, they're obviously being hit the hardest, or what we say hospitality. So I have friends from HBS who work for Hilton, who work for Marriott, who work for Airbnb, who work for Uber. So they have been hit in a different way. And they're the banks who are hit in a different way. So the answer is because the US passed such a huge stimulus bill, as you know, trillions of dollars just a couple of months ago, that helped a lot of the organizations keep the people on staff because it was essentially a protection of their payroll. So they were able to keep most of the employees on their payroll and not fire them. But it was a temporary measure. In the US, what we now know is we are potentially looking at a second wave of COVID-19. The vaccine is probably about a year or so from being fully developed and passed through human trials. But it's not just about the vaccine being developed. It has to go through many other logistical hurdles for millions of people to take it, right? So there are 400 million people in the US. So who gets it? 400 million people. Who gets it? At what level, what frequency, what phases or schedule is going to determine when people go back to work, when children go back to school, and how the economy survives. This is also the election year. In 2020, we will be going to the polls. And that's another big issue where the presidential candidates are campaigning. So this has become a political issue and not just a health issue. So corporate has slowed down for sure. In fact, we are in a sort of recession, and it'll probably, what I'm hearing, it's going to take us a few years at least to even get back to what unemployment levels were 5 years ago. We have gone from 3-4%, 2% unemployment level to now close to 10%. 40 million Americans filed for unemployment in the last 2 weeks, 40 million. We haven't had that many people out of work since the Great Depression of the 1930s. So the situation is bad. It's very bad, but it's compounded by the fact that, let me give you my example. I'm very lucky that I can work from home mostly. I maybe go in once or twice a month or something, but for the most part, my husband and I, we are working from home because my children have not gone to school since March. So 3 months they're at home, and summer camps are canceled because here we have school is off for 10 weeks. So for working parents, we have to send my kids to some kind of summer camp for me to go to work. And then school starts in August. Our school board just let us know that school is not going to open normally in August. So for the next whole year, US schools are not going to open normally. If my kids can't go to school, it's very simple. I can't go back to work. If I can't go back to work, there's a loss of productivity. So when we talk about COVID, it is much more than a health crisis or even an economic crisis. We are talking about a community, a social crisis. And the answer is not just in the government's hands. So it's not good. It's not going to get any better anytime soon. People who already have good jobs or stable jobs are probably in a better position like me because I wasn't fired. I will not be fired from my government job. But it's going to take us a few years to even get back to normal. Or
yeah, I guess that will lead to increasing entrepreneurship in USA and Pakistan and other countries, because especially the people who get laid off from the private sector, they are going to explore new
Other
options
opportunities.
on their own.
Absolutely. The issue is though, they're going to face a stiff competition, right? Because a lot of people will be jumping into the entrepreneurship market, and a lot of people will be starting e-businesses. So if someone wants to make soap, for example, I know one of my friends wants to start a soap making business, soap and candles. Wonderful idea. She's very talented. There are 1,000 other people selling soaps online. So how do you differentiate yourself? How do you make your supply chain efficient? How do you make your price right? And how do you market yourself through millions of websites out there? So yours is the website that reaches the right customer at the right time for her to make that sale. So it's encouraging in the sense that people will become more creative maybe and stop thinking about corporate jobs and doing something on their own. But they're also entering a crowded marketplace because there's a limited number of investors and money is also finite. So all of these things will have to play out in the next few years. Yes.
Thank you very much. Can we take a few more quick questions, Ruhana? Two, three?
Yeah, I have time. So I have a few more minutes. If
okay, so I have Bilal Mansoor is there from his alums graduate, and he has been Bilal. Can you switch his mic on? Abdullah, can you switch Bilal's mic on? Allow him to open his camera, and then Osama, and then Faria Khalid is a professor of entrepreneurship in Lahore. So only 3 quick questions, please. And then because she has her kid's birthday today, and she's the mother of twins, mashallah. What are the name of the kids, mashallah? Okay.
Zafir Hafiz Rahman and Suha Hafiz Rahman.
Mashallah, wonderful, wonderful. So, Bilal, are you there?
Yeah,
yes, I can.
Okay. Ruhana, it's a pleasure to have you on board, and listening to your story is amazing. First of all, want to congratulate you on the tremendous achievement. I can understand you are from the same background as we have. So going from where we are to where you are right now is a hell lot of a work, and it requires tremendous amount of effort, plus some extra things, which you probably, due to your humility and humble nature, haven't talked of much, but I'm sure there's a lot more than what you've talked of in achieving what you are at right now. Just talking about life in general, life normally throws curveballs at you as well. Just wondering if you had any in your life, and how and what attitude, and how is it that you were able to overcome those difficult circumstances, if there were any?
Thank you so much, Bilal. So let me make sure that I understand the question correctly for everyone else. If I have faced true adversity in my life, and if so, how have I overcome this difficult situation? Is that the question? Yes. Okay. I don't think any human life is without adversity, right? Yes. We try to present a happy, positive image, but I will say this though, and thank you so much, Alhamdulillah, for saying that you think I am a humble person. Well, I'll first say that it is the human being's job to be humble, because arrogance or pride is a cloak only worn by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It says very clearly that it's not on human beings. It's not on human beings to judge someone else. It's not on human beings to be proud or confident. You can be happy if you've done something good, but at least I was raised by my parents who were very focused on doing the right thing, but not thinking about it too much. So when we talk about adversity, I think that one of my big challenges in life was I started a PhD in economics. At the young age of 21. And I thought that was the right path for me. And I went there and I was miserable. I was absolutely miserable. I left a good job with Unilever Bangladesh. I left Dhaka, my friends, my family, because I thought this is what I should be doing and this makes sense. And I went to the US, University of Virginia, as a matter of fact, as the youngest PhD student in the economics department at 21. And after 2 months of sitting there, I was miserable. I didn't do well. I didn't like it. And I realized I don't even like economics that much to be doing this. My heart's not in it. My brain's not in it. And I felt so alone that I wasted all this money and time. I've left a good job and I've just come here, and everyone back home thinks I'm this star and this amazingly impressive person at 21 to do all of this, but I'm a failure. I'm an imposter. This is not making sense. I don't want to do this. I don't enjoy this. but I could not even think of how to stop it. I could not figure out how to say no to my advisor. I couldn't figure out how to say this to my parents. I couldn't, I was paralyzed. I think those two were some of the toughest months of my life, those 2, 3 months, because on the one hand, I was failing my parents and people who had so much faith and expectations in me. I'd used some of my own money to buy a ticket to the US. And I was sitting in the classroom surrounded by super smart people thinking, I so don't belong here. So you talk about a lesson in humility. Oh boy. And you know, when you say what helped me overcome it, I think it was not a what or a who. Because of my nature, I'm sure you figured out that I'm very extrovert. I'm a naturally extrovert, vivacious. Like I will go and random people come up and talk to me. I don't know why. People talk to me. I talk to people. So I always make friendships. And that's one of the qualities, alhamdulillah, I'm most grateful for, that people feel comfortable reaching out to me and connecting with me. Same thing happened. The first day I was on that campus, I went to a library and there was a man sitting there, librarian. He looked South Asian. I went up and I started talking. He turned out to be Bangladeshi. And he liked me so much, he said, oh, well, your dorm hasn't opened. And I know you're in some kind of student housing, beta. So till your classes start officially, why don't you come live with me and my wife? Why live by yourself? You're alone here, you know? I said, okay, uncle. And I went and lived with him. And in those 2 months, he saw how miserable I was. My parents were not there. He became basically my father. He gave me courage every day to go to class, to try to figure it out. And if not, how to end this. He would see me cry when I came home. He would comfort me. He would pray with me. And he showed me, and he kept telling me that at 21, you think your life is over. At 21, you think this is the worst thing that can happen to you. Better let me tell you, this is nothing. This is nothing. Life is full of adversity. Life will give you so much more challenges that these academic problems will seem like nothing. You have to learn to deal with these things. And you have to have the courage to say no or stop bad things when it's happening. If you don't learn it now, you'll never learn it. So he gave me the courage, and I thought about it and I prayed a lot. I simply called my parents one day and I said, Ma, I'm not going to do this. I can't do this. I don't want to do this. I just said this. I don't want to do this. I can't do this. My mother bought the next flight to the US. In 48 hours, she came to Virginia. She said, you don't want to do this? I said, no. She said, do you have a life's plan? Like, what are you going to do with your life? I said, Ma, I can tell you, I don't know that yet, but I will figure it out. I'm the sort of person, I'll figure it out. I'm going to go back to Dhaka and I'm going to figure this out. Give me 2 years. She said, fine, pack your bags. Went to Dhaka, applied to 5 jobs, rejected everywhere. Remember, I had a degree from LSE. I'd worked for Unilever Bangladesh. Rejected from 5 jobs, straight up. Kept applying, went into Nestle Bangladesh, started teaching French again at Alliance Française. And those 3 years before I got married and moved to the US was, I think, the best years of my life. So, and there are many other adversities. When I was pregnant with my children, I had a very bad pregnancy. I had to have emergency surgery when I was 3 months pregnant. They had to cut some organs out. Horrible, horrible things. I don't want to talk about it right now. But throughout everything, my attitude is, Allah knows best. He has a plan for me that I don't know. My job is to have faith and do my best and be positive and be grateful. The rest can take care of itself. So that's really how I just try to be, you know, I don't know.
Just the second last question, Osama, and then we'll go to Lahore for Dr. Farhia. Osama, quick question, very quick. Yes.
Yeah, hello.
Introduce yourself. Introduce yourself.
Osama Salver. And you talked about ethics and like, you know, value system. And I personally believe that, you know, all of us should like try to live like 80% our lives for ourselves and 20% for others, right? Whereas like some of us are living like trying to live 200, 300% of our lives during the lifetime, right? Making money and accumulating wealth. So how well are you able to reflect upon your value system at work? And does it have like a really good impact? Do people talk about you in a positive manner, like based on your own value and cultural system that you bring from Bangladesh?
It's a good question. Thank you. First of all, your percentages are fascinating. I never think of quite ratios like that. So that's very, very funny, very interesting to me. So I don't think you can be a very different person with different people. As I said, you know, when I'm a mother, I'm very much a mother. I'm a wife, I'm a daughter-in-law, I'm a sister, I'm a cousin, I'm an employee, I'm a manager, I'm a boss. And sure, those roles are slightly different, but what you are essentially as a human being can't change. Like you can't be honest with your boss and you can't be dishonest with your children, right? So if I tell my children that if you do this, you get 2 hours of TV, and I didn't do it one day, my children are very smart. They said, Ma, you broke your word. Remember, you teach us all the time, you have to keep your word. So they keep me honest. So what I'm trying to say is, you essentially have to have the same value system, no matter where you are, whether you're dealing with a boss or dealing with your husband or dealing with a friend or employee. Within that, because I try to be me, you see, it's kind of hard to explain. And I know I'm on Zoom with all of you, and you might not all believe me or think, oh, she's saying all of these things. And it's hard to explain, but I truly don't have an agenda in life. I don't. I'm on this earth for a purpose. I try to do my job to the best of my ability with my faith. I'm extremely grateful, shukr alhamdulillah, for everything I have and everything I will have. And within that, I make mistakes all the time. I make mistakes. I do not great things, and I ask forgiveness. But at the very essence, I try to be the same everywhere. And because I don't have an act that I put on, like, oh, I'm with you now and then I'm with somebody, people get that. So at work, how this has helped is, when you work in a place for 10 years or 5 years, you get a reputation, right? Even before you go to another department, people say, oh, Ruhana, yeah, we know her. Oh, someone has worked with her. Your reputation will precede you. So if you work on being a true, authentic person and you've done good work, you don't have to talk about yourself at one point. People will talk about you. People will say, I want Ruhana on my team, or there's a position or opening here. Hey, do you know Ruhana? Yeah, I know her. Can you try to make sure that she gets on this team? So that is what I cultivate. And so when I get those calls from people in the organization saying, hey, you don't know me, but so-and-so talked to me about you. Do you have 10 minutes? Can you come to this meeting? Can you work on this project? I know that my work is done, because I can sit you down and talk to you about me, or I can do my work and be the person I am, and my reputation will go ahead of me. This is, at least at work, what I try to do.
So you are what you are, mashallah. Great. So the last question coming up is Dr. Fariha. She's a professor of entrepreneurship. She is a mother. She has been my student as well. So Fariha, please, quick. I know you ask long questions, but people are waiting for dinner. So please, it should be less.
Assalamu alaikum. Yes.
Wa alaikum salam.
Assalamu alaikum. It was really inspiring to listen you, and I'm very thankful to Dr. Shah that he provided us this opportunity. I have just a quick and small question, because what I found in you is there are many entrepreneurial qualities in you, and we say that an organization can grow if the people with entrepreneurial spirit have in those organizations. So these qualities, entrepreneurial qualities, the proactiveness, creativity, problem solving, are these coming from school, or these are coming from being an MBA student? That's it.
It's a combination. The question is entrepreneurial qualities that help one in work on any organization. Where do these traits come from? Is it a matter of schooling? Is it a matter of other areas of life, right? Is that the question, Priya?
Yes.
G. Thank you. So I think for me, what I've learned is we talk about leadership a lot, right? I mean, leadership is a discipline now. There are courses on leadership, there's masters in leadership. So there are certain things that can be taught, and there are certain things that are innate. So I think everyone can learn and practice to be a better public speaker, or a better presenter, or a better leader. Everyone can learn the tools of project management and be a better consultant, or be a better problem solver. But there has to be an authentic passion in you in making that a reality. So if I pay lip service to building a team, right? I say, oh, I love building teams. I think people really have so much to contribute and we should listen to everybody and whatnot. But when I'm having team meetings, if I don't make sure that everyone is speaking up, or one or two people are not monopolizing the conversation, if I'm not making sure that everyone is contributing, then that's not a real team, is it? So in theory, I checked the box. I made a team, I invited 5 people, I had a session, I asked them what they thought, but I didn't really collect their opinion. I didn't document what they said. I didn't make sure everyone spoke and had a voice, and I didn't take the right input. So the theory taught me to do the things which I did, but I didn't implement it in the right way. So even entrepreneurship and creativity and problem solving, right? In the government, As I started off by saying, as a bureaucrat in the federal government, what option is there for me to innovate? I believe in every job you can be a leader. In every job you can be a creative problem solver. And in every job you can be an entrepreneur. Entrepreneurship is not just about starting a new business or telling people what is wrong. In my job, the way we're serving the customers internally and externally, if I innovate and find a new way of reaching them, of collecting feedback and taking that feedback and improving something, voila, that is innovation. That is creativity. That's being an entrepreneur. So it's very important to learn the tools of management and MBAs and from school or books, but you truly have to look to yourself and figure out, how do I make this work in my context as a professor, as a farmer, as a consultant, as a mother, as a business person? What is my situation and what do I need to adapt? It will come back to you and your values, I think, ultimately.
Ruhana, what a great explanation. And just a last, some small question from my side. So Clayton's teachings and his class help you a lot to reflect, is it? It helps you structure your thoughts, and which you learn from your mom and dad, your values, which you learn from your family.
It crystallized it.
Okay.
I think I have a certain value system anyways, even going into HBS and being surrounded by people who wanted to make money. Some of my classmates are multimillionaires now, right?
Wow.
Travel the world. They're president of this and that. But the question I will ask myself, remember, my dad said one thing, my Baba always said one thing. You have to go to bed with your own conscience. So what you do every day, you look in the mirror and you tell me, can you look in the mirror and look yourself in the eye? Can you do that? Have you been as honest as you can? And can you look yourself in the eye and go to bed with a light heart? Can you do that? That is the test I want you to go through every day. My dad was partner of Rahman Haq, or KPMG, the biggest chartered accountancy firms in Bangladesh. So he spent his life in service, not as a business person. So he's very honest in his dealings. In a country like Bangladesh, dealing with tax people, not one paisa, not one taka would he want not to account for. He's an accountant and super honest accountant. My mother was a school teacher. So their values was, you have to live with yourself. And my professors always said that nobody on their deathbed, when the angel of death comes for you, nobody ever said, I wish I had gone to more meetings. Nobody ever says, I wish I had done more projects. I wish I had attended more meetings. Everyone always says, when their time is near, go to their God. I wish I was there more for my family. I wish I did more for my community. I wish I was there more or helped more. I wish. So I don't know, Shaidan, everything I do, those three things just influence me.
MashaAllah. May Allah bless you. It has made us humbled us. It's a great learning for me, my students.